Chapter 1. The jungles of Kharra were silent, except for the faint hum of the wind that whispered through the dense foliage. Nathan Kline's boots sank into the soft ground as he carefully made his way through the undergrowth, the scent of wet earth and alien flowers filling the air. He adjusted the straps of his backpack and glanced back at his team, their faces lit by the glow of their torches. They were all weary, exhausted from days of exploration, but Nathan felt the electric thrill of discovery stirring within him. He knew they were close. The ruins of an ancient city lay ahead, hidden beneath thick vines and the growth of centuries. He could feel it in his bones. The way the ground beneath him felt different, the air thick with history. This wasn't just another forgotten settlement. This was something far more significant. He had spent years studying the language of Kharra's first inhabitants, and he was certain that this place held the key to unlocking it. "Keep your eyes peeled," Nathan muttered, his voice barely above a whisper. "We're in the heart of it now." The rest of the team nodded, their faces pale with fatigue, but their expressions hardening with the excitement of what lay ahead. Nathan led the way, his flashlight beam flicking over the crumbled stone walls that were now half buried by the encroaching jungle. The architecture was unlike anything he had ever seen. Sharp angles, smooth surfaces, and intricate carvings that twisted and turned in patterns that hinted at a complex language. Suddenly, Nathan froze, his eyes locked on an entrance in the stone wall ahead. It was narrow, almost hidden by vines, but unmistakable. The archway seemed to call to him, and as he moved closer, his heart pounded in his chest. This was it. He knelt down, brushing aside the thick layers of vines and debris, revealing the smooth, polished surface of the doorway. The carvings on the stone were familiar, symbols he had spent years deciphering, bits and pieces of a language that had eluded humanity. As he traced the patterns with his fingers, he felt a shiver run down his spine. This was a place of importance. It wasn't just a ruin, it was a message. "Nathan, what is it?" asked Liana, one of his team members, her voice tinged with curiosity and concern. I think we found something," Nathan said, his voice shaky but filled with awe. "This is it, the language, the people. It's all here." The group gathered around him, their interest piqued. They had been searching for days, but they all knew that Nathan had spent his entire career studying the ancient language of Kharra's first civilization. If anyone could decipher this, it was him. Nathan stood, wiping his hands on his pants, trying to shake the excitement out of his voice. "We need to get inside," he said. "I think this is where we'll find the answers we've been looking for." With careful movements, they pried the entrance open, the ancient stone groaning as if awakening from a long slumber. The air inside was stale, but there was a sharpness to it, a quiet pulse of something ancient and powerful. Nathan stepped inside first, his flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. What they found beyond the entrance was not what Nathan expected. The room stretched out before them, vast, with high ceilings that disappeared into shadows. The walls were lined with more carvings, more symbols that Nathan recognized but couldn't fully comprehend. At the far end of the room, a massive stone structure stood, a pedestal intricately carved with something lying atop it, hidden beneath layers of dust. Nathan moved toward it, his every step careful, his eyes trained on the pedestal. He could feel the significance of the moment weighing heavily on him. He had found it, the discovery he had been chasing for years. But as he reached the pedestal and cleared the dust, his breath caught in his throat. Lying on the pedestal, almost as though it had been waiting for him, was a young girl. Her skin was pale, almost translucent, and her eyes were closed as if in sleep. She was dressed in tattered clothing that seemed to blend into the ancient surroundings. Her long, dark hair cascaded around her shoulders, tangled with vines and dust. Nathan's heart skipped a beat as he reached out to touch her arm, his fingers trembling. "Is she?" Liana started, her voice barely above a whisper. "Alive." Nathan finished for her. He bent closer, studying her features. The girl didn't move, but there was something about her, something that felt alive in a way he couldn't explain. He gently placed his hand on her forehead, and for a moment, he thought he felt a faint pulse beneath his fingertips. He jerked his hand back, his mind racing. This wasn't possible. How could she be alive after all these years? Suddenly, the girl's eyes fluttered open. Nathan's breath caught in his throat, and he instinctively took a step back. Her gaze was clear, but there was something unsettling about it, something ancient in the depths of her eyes. She blinked slowly, as though adjusting to the light, and then, with a voice that sent chills down Nathan's spine, she spoke. "You speak the lost language of our ancestors," she said, her voice soft but filled with a weight that Nathan couldn't quite understand. Nathan froze. He had only heard fragments of the language spoken in old records, some ancient and long-forgotten dialects that had never made sense to anyone. And yet, here she was, speaking it fluently. His pulse quickened as the realization hit him. This was no ordinary girl. This was someone from the past, someone who had somehow survived the collapse of her civilization. He stared at her, his mind struggling to process the impossible. You speak the language?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. She nodded slowly, her expression unreadable. "I'm the last of my people, and you, human, are the key to what remains of us." Nathan's mind raced, the weight of her words sinking in. She was the last of an ancient civilization. Her people had been lost for centuries, their language thought to be dead. Yet here she was, alive, and speaking the language that had eluded humanity for so long. "This," Nathan began, his voice trembling with awe, "this is beyond anything I've ever imagined." The girl's eyes softened, and she tilted her head slightly. "You are not meant to understand yet, but you will." As the girl's words hung in the air, the reality of their discovery began to settle in. This was the key to unlocking Kharra's true past, the answers to questions humanity had long asked. But it was also a burden, a responsibility that would force Nathan to choose between his obsession with knowledge and the potential danger of uncovering what was hidden here. And outside, the growing hum of military vehicles signaled that their time was running out. The world outside had no idea what they were about to stumble upon. This chapter sets the stage for an intriguing exploration of discovery, mystery, and the impending conflict between Nathan's thirst for knowledge and the military's desire for control. It draws the reader in by introducing an impossible situation, sparking curiosity, and setting up the stakes for the story to come. Chapter 2. Nathan's breath was shallow, his pulse racing as the girl sat up, her presence casting a strange, quiet authority over the room. He had been prepared for a discovery, but not for this, an actual living, breathing link to a past long buried. His mind couldn't fully grasp the implications. His training, his years of research, his obsession with the lost language of Kharra, all of it was suddenly in question. This girl, Lyra, was more than just a survivor. She was a living relic, the last of her people. Her eyes met his with a penetrating gaze, and Nathan felt an unsettling sense of recognition. There was something in her expression, something ancient and wise, that made him feel as if he were standing at the precipice of something far beyond his understanding. But it was more than that. It was a sense of familiarity, as though he had known her or her kind in another life. "You speak our language," she repeated, her voice soft but charged with an unmistakable weight. "But you do not know its true meaning." Nathan swallowed, his throat dry. He had studied the language of Kharra's ancient civilization for years, but this was different. This was no academic pursuit. This was history coming to life before his very eyes. He had been on this mission to uncover knowledge, but the deeper truth of his discovery was now threatening to overwhelm him. I don't understand," Nathan stammered, struggling to keep his composure. He couldn't allow himself to fall apart now. Not when a mystery of his lifetime had just unfolded in front of him. "How are you alive? Your people, your civilization, vanished long ago. I thought you were all gone." Lyra's gaze softened, a faint glimmer of sorrow passing through her eyes. "My people, we were once the stewards of Kharra. We built this place, this city, but we made a mistake, a great mistake, and we paid the price for it." Nathan could feel the weight of her words pressing down on him. His mind was spinning, and his heart raced as he leaned in closer. He had to understand. He had to know what had happened. What mistake? What happened to your people? Lyra took a deep breath, her hands trembling as she reached for the stone beside her. The ancient carvings along the walls seemed to respond to her presence, almost as if the city itself was listening. The power we sought, she said, her voice lowering, was too much for us. It consumed us. We thought we could control it, use it to help the galaxy, to uplift it. But it corrupted us, and we became what we feared most. Nathan's mind raced, trying to piece together the fragments of history he had studied. What power was she talking about? Was this the technology hidden beneath the planet? The same technology he had sensed earlier? The one that could change everything for humanity? He had to ask, what is this power? What do you mean it corrupted you? Lyra's eyes flickered, as if the memories were too painful to relive. It is buried deep beneath this city, beneath Kharra itself. The knowledge and power of our people, their technology, it is unlike anything you can imagine. But we did not know its true cost. Nathan's heart pounded in his chest. The gravity of what she was saying was beyond anything he had ever anticipated. The language he had struggled to decode, the ruins they had uncovered, were all pointing to something far more dangerous than he had realized. He had known there was more to Kharra than simple relics. This planet was a repository of power, ancient, volatile, and capable of reshaping the galaxy. But how far would humanity go to control it? Suddenly, a shout broke through the tension in the air. It was Liana, Nathan's colleague, standing at the entrance to the room, her face pale with fear. "Nathan!" Liana's voice trembled as she stepped forward. "We've got company. Military vehicles are approaching. They're from the Expeditionary Force. They'll be here any minute." Nathan turned sharply, panic rising in his chest. He knew this was coming. Commander Solis and her team had been monitoring their every move, and the military's interest in the ruins of Kharra wasn't just academic. They wanted control. And if Solis got her hands on Lyra, on whatever power lay hidden beneath Kharra, it would spell disaster. "We need to move," Nathan said urgently, turning to Lyra. He had no idea how she would react to the looming threat of the military, but he knew one thing. He couldn't let her fall into their hands. Lyra, however, remained still, her gaze fixed on Nathan. "You cannot control it. No one can. You must understand, it is not just a power to be wielded. It is a part of us, and if it is unleashed, it will consume everything. Your people will make the same mistake we did." Nathan's mind was a whirlwind of thoughts. What she was saying didn't match the military's objective: control the power, secure humanity's dominance over the galaxy. Solis wouldn't care about the cost. She only wanted to win. Nathan knew that if they weren't careful, the entire planet, and perhaps humanity, would pay the price. "We don't have time for this," Nathan said, his voice sharp with urgency. "We need to get you out of here. You'll be safe with me, I promise." Lyra's expression softened, and for the first time, Nathan saw a flicker of trust in her eyes. "I do not fear them," she said quietly. "I fear what your people will do with the power you do not understand." The ground beneath them rumbled again, and Nathan glanced nervously at the entrance. He could hear the hum of engines, the approach of the military's vehicles. The window of safety was closing fast. "Nathan!" Liana shouted again, her voice laced with panic. "We don't have time." Nathan nodded, steeling himself. "Lyra, we have to go now." Lyra stood slowly, her movements graceful and deliberate. She glanced one last time at the city around her, the ruins of her people's civilization, before turning to Nathan. "You must listen, human," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "The power is not just buried in Kharra. It is a living thing, and it will not be denied." With that, Nathan grabbed Lyra's hand, pulling her toward the exit. The city that had once thrived with life was now a tomb, its secrets waiting to be uncovered, but the clock was ticking. They had to escape before the military descended upon them, before the power Lyra had warned about could be unleashed. He didn't know how much time they had, but with Lyra's words echoing in his mind, He knew that what lay ahead would be far more dangerous than anything he had ever encountered. As they ran through the darkened corridors, the sound of the approaching military forces grew louder. They were no longer just exploring the past. They were racing against it. This chapter builds on the discovery of the alien girl, Lyra, and her cryptic warnings about the ancient power buried on Kharra. Nathan's moral conflict deepens as he is forced to decide between protecting Lyra and preserving the secrets of the ancient civilization, or surrendering them to the military. The tension mounts, setting the stage for an inevitable clash between knowledge and control. Chapter 3. The jungle around them was dense, the air thick with humidity and the sound of distant, alien creatures. Nathan's breath came in sharp bursts as he pushed through the underbrush, Lyra's hand still tightly grasped in his. The military's vehicles were close now, their engines humming in the distance, and Nathan knew there was no time to waste. Every second counted. "How far are they?" Nathan hissed, looking over his shoulder at Liana, who had been trailing behind them. "Not far. Maybe 20 minutes, Liana replied, her voice tinged with fear. "But if we don't move faster, they'll catch up with us. We have to make it to the safe zone. I don't want to think about what happens if they find her." Nathan nodded grimly, pushing forward. His thoughts were a blur. Lyra, the girl who had opened up a window into an entirely lost civilization, was now at the heart of a growing conflict. The military, Commander Solis in particular, would stop at nothing to secure her, to understand the power she represented. But Nathan wasn't so sure the answers were worth the cost. He was starting to question everything. The mission, the motives of the people he was working with, and his own ability to protect Lyra from what was coming. Ahead of them, Lyra moved with an eerie calm. Despite the urgency of the situation, there was something about her presence that seemed almost timeless, as if she were part of the planet itself. The way she walked, unhurried and purposeful, unsettled Nathan. She wasn't panicking, not even as the military's presence drew closer. "Lyra," Nathan called, trying to steady his breath. "We need to talk." She turned her head slowly, her eyes catching the faint glow of the jungle's undergrowth. Her gaze was unreadable, like she was seeing something beyond what Nathan could comprehend. "You're afraid," she said softly, her voice calm but piercing. "You believe they will take me, but what will they do with what they find?" Nathan's heart skipped. "What do you mean?" "The power," Lyra continued, her voice almost a whisper. "It is not just technology. It is part of us. My people, we lived with it, but it consumed us. You do not understand the cost." Nathan swallowed hard. The weight of her words had settled heavily in his mind. The technology buried beneath Kharra wasn't just a relic of a lost civilization. It was something more, a force that could destroy or transform. But was humanity prepared for that kind of power? "I don't want to lose you, Lyra," Nathan said, his voice hoarse. "But the military is coming, and they will never understand. They want control, and if they get it, they'll use it recklessly. We need to stop them before they make things worse." Lyra's lips curved into a faint, sorrowful smile. "It is not you who must stop them, Nathan. It is your people. You must decide what you value more, knowledge or survival." Nathan clenched his fists. "I'm not willing to let them destroy what's left of you, of your people's legacy." "Then you must protect it," Lyra said, her eyes narrowing as if she understood the enormity of his words. "But know this, the power cannot be controlled by any one race. It will not bow to you or your kind. It will either save or destroy you." Nathan stared at her, feeling a deep weight settle in his chest. He had always believed that knowledge, pure knowledge, was the key to unlocking humanity's potential. But now he was facing a stark reality. Knowledge without wisdom could lead to destruction. Behind them, the sounds of military vehicles grew louder, and Nathan knew time was slipping away. He had to act. The clearing up ahead came into view, and Nathan's heart dropped as he saw the military convoy in the distance. Humvees and armored trucks rolled through the jungle, cutting through the trees with the precision of a machine. Commander Solis's presence was unmistakable. Her vehicle, a sleek black transport, was in the lead. The power in the air was palpable. She was there, and she was on a mission to secure whatever Nathan had discovered. "There's no time," Nathan muttered under his breath, his thoughts racing. "We have to get to the safe zone now." He glanced at Liana, who was already preparing herself for what might come next. Her gun was at the ready, her face set in grim determination. She had been with him through thick and thin, but even she was beginning to see the enormity of what they were facing. The military wasn't just after answers, they were after power. "What's the plan, Nathan?" Liana asked, her voice steady but laced with urgency. "We can't outrun them," Nathan said, his mind calculating their options. "But maybe we can hide. There's an old bunker to the west. I've been mapping it out. If we can make it there, we might have a chance to regroup." Lyra, who had been silent for a long moment, spoke up. "The bunker will not protect you. If you take me there, they will find you." Nathan looked at her, his brow furrowed. "Then what do you suggest we do?" She hesitated before answering, her gaze distant. "You must make a choice. If you believe you can control the power hidden beneath the city, you must go there. The truth is not in the bunker. It is beneath the earth." Nathan's chest tightened. The choice was simple, yet terrifying. The bunker was safe, but it wouldn't offer answers, only temporary shelter. But the deeper truth, the one that had eluded humanity for centuries, lay beneath Kharra. If he could reach it, he could unlock it, but there was no going back once they did. Lyra's words echoed in his mind. The power cannot be controlled by any one race. He turned to Liana, his decision made. "We have to go to the ruins. We need to reach the heart of the city. We can't hide anymore." Liana nodded, her face hardening. She understood what Nathan was choosing. It was no longer about running or hiding. It was about facing the unknown head-on. As they began to move toward the ruins, Nathan could feel the weight of the decision bearing down on him. The military wasn't just chasing them. They were chasing the truth, and that truth could either save or destroy them all. Nathan's heart pounded as he glanced at Lyra, who seemed at peace with the path ahead. She wasn't afraid of what lay beneath the surface, but Nathan couldn't shake the nagging doubt in his mind. What if they weren't ready? What if humanity wasn't ready? The military was closing in fast. Commander Solis would stop at nothing to seize control, but Nathan couldn't let her. Not when the fate of so many rested on what they would uncover in the depths of Kharra. They had no choice but to push forward. The truth lay ahead, buried deep beneath the planet's surface. And with it, the key to humanity's future. Chapter for the ground beneath them shook, sending ripples through the jungle floor. Nathan felt the vibrations in his bones, his heartbeat quickening. The rumble wasn't a distant storm or an animal. It was the pulse of something far more ancient and dangerous, stirring deep below Kharra. "Move!" Nathan shouted, his voice urgent, as he grabbed Lyra's hand and pulled her forward. The military wasn't far behind. He could hear the engines of the armored vehicles roaring through the jungle, their noise growing louder with every passing second. They didn't have time to waste. Lyra's face was unreadable, her eyes distant. She had known what was coming. She had warned them, but Nathan couldn't stop now. They had to reach the heart of the city. The ruins, the alien technology hidden beneath, were their only chance to survive. "This is the only way," Nathan said, his voice tight with determination. "We can't outrun them, but if we can reach the core, maybe we can access the power before they do." Lyra nodded, but there was something haunting in her gaze. "You do not understand what you are asking for," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "The power below is not a tool to be wielded. It is a force, a living thing." Nathan's grip tightened. He had heard this before, but the urgency of the situation pushed aside his doubts. He couldn't afford to be hesitant. They had to push forward. "Then we'll use it carefully," Nathan said, though his voice faltered. He didn't know if they could control it, but there was no other option. Commander Solis and her forces wouldn't stop until they had the technology, and if they got their hands on it, there would be no telling what they would do with it. The jungle began to thin as they approached the ruins, the towering structures rising before them like the skeletal remains of a forgotten civilization. Massive stone pillars, half buried in vines and moss, lined the entrance to what once had been a grand city. The carvings on the walls seemed to pulse with a subtle energy, as if the city itself was alive, watching them. The silence was oppressive, the weight of history pressing down on them. "Stay close," Nathan said, his voice steady but filled with a quiet anxiety. He had no idea what was waiting for them inside, but he couldn't allow himself to falter now. As they entered the ruins, the air grew colder, and the walls seemed to close in. Lyra moved ahead of them, her steps sure, as if she knew the path even without looking. Nathan and Liana followed, their eyes darting around, alert for any sign of movement. "Why are you doing this?" Liana asked, her voice cutting through the heavy silence. She had been quiet since their departure from the jungle, but now her curiosity couldn't be held back. "You said we can't control it. Why are you taking us to the source of this power?" Lyra turned to face them, her expression unreadable. "Because it is the only way to protect what remains. If you do not act, the power will consume everything, just as it did to my people. Your people will be no different." Nathan felt the weight of her words. The ancient civilization had collapsed under the burden of their own ambition, their lust for power. But Lyra had survived, and now humanity had a chance to learn from that mistake. He didn't know if it was enough, if humanity was even capable of learning the lesson, but there was no turning back now. "Then we'll make sure we don't repeat it," Nathan said, though the uncertainty in his voice betrayed him. They reached the center of the ruins, a massive chamber that seemed to stretch endlessly in all directions. The walls were covered in strange symbols, and the air hummed with an energy that was almost tangible. At the far end of the chamber stood a pedestal, atop which rested a glowing orb, pulsating with a light that seemed to breathe. "This is it," Nathan whispered, awe and fear mixing in his chest. The orb was the key. It had to be. Lyra stepped forward, her movements graceful but deliberate. "This is where it all began," she said, her voice reverberating with the weight of her people's history. "My ancestors built this city to house the power they found. They believed they could control it. But it was not meant to be controlled. It was meant to be understood." Nathan took a tentative step forward, his hand reaching out to touch the orb. The air around it seemed to shimmer, and a low, vibrating hum filled the chamber. He hesitated, feeling the weight of the decision. But this was the moment. This was the culmination of everything he had worked for, everything he had sacrificed. "Do it," Lyra urged, her voice soft but firm. "But know that once you do, you'll have to live with the consequences." Nathan nodded, steeling himself. He could feel the weight of her words, but he didn't have a choice. The orb's power was the only chance they had. If they could harness it, they might have a shot at stopping Solis and her forces. His fingers brushed the surface of the orb, and immediately the energy inside it surged, sending a jolt of electricity through his body. The room seemed to crackle with energy, and the symbols on the walls began to glow, shifting and changing as if coming to life. The ground beneath them trembled again, and the entire chamber shook. Nathan stumbled backward, his heart racing as the orb pulsed with increasing intensity. The walls groaned, and the ceiling above them cracked, debris falling around them. "This isn't right," Liana shouted, panic creeping into her voice. "We need to get out of here." But Nathan didn't move. He couldn't. The orb was pulling him in, its energy overwhelming him. He could hear the whispers now, voices in the language Lyra had spoken, ancient and haunting, filling his mind. He couldn't make sense of them, but they felt like a warning of the consequences of wielding such power. "Please," Lyra's voice broke through the noise in his mind. "You must stop before it consumes you." But it was too late. The power had taken hold, and Nathan could feel it surging through him, filling him with knowledge, with understanding. The history of Kharra, the rise and fall of Lyra's people, the knowledge they had sought, it was all unfolding before him. The answers were there, but so was the price. The chamber began to collapse around them. The walls cracked and shattered, and the ground split open, revealing a chasm of darkness below. Nathan's vision blurred as the weight of the power threatened to overwhelm him. "Get back," Lyra shouted, pulling him away from the pedestal. But Nathan could barely hear her over the deafening roar of the collapsing ruins. He didn't know how much time they had. But one thing was clear. The power they had awakened would either save them or destroy them all. Chapter 5. The ruins around them were crumbling. The once grand city, now a crumbled monument to a forgotten age. The tremors from the energy surge had shattered the walls and sent dust billowing through the air, choking the breath from Nathan's lungs. Every instinct in him screamed to run, to escape the destruction, but he couldn't move. The power of the orb, the knowledge it had unlocked, had taken root inside him, flooding his mind with visions, with history, with unimaginable possibilities. And yet it was too much, too powerful. Stop it. Lyra's voice cut through the chaos, sharp and desperate. She grabbed Nathan by the arm, pulling him toward the exit, but he barely reacted, lost in the whirlwind of his thoughts. He had thought he understood the stakes, but now everything was different. The energy he felt coursing through his body wasn't just knowledge. It was a part of him. It was Kharra's legacy, but also its curse. The civilization that had once thrived here had been destroyed by the very power they had sought to control. And now Nathan was teetering on the edge of that same fate. Nathan! Lyra's grip tightened, shaking him from his stupor. We need to go now, before it's too late. Nathan blinked, his vision clearing as he finally focused on her. The fear in her eyes made his heart race. I can't stop it. It's inside me, Lyra. The power. He couldn't find the words to explain it. The power was a presence inside him, an ancient force that he couldn't control but felt every inch of. His head spun with the weight of it. You don't have to control it, Lyra said urgently, her voice quiet but firm. You just need to let it go. We can't contain it. No one can. But we can stop it from destroying everything. The ground shook again, sending another wave of dust and debris cascading from the walls. Nathan's legs wobbled beneath him as the force within him pulsed with renewed intensity. The walls around them seemed to crack further, the city itself groaning in protest. What do I do, Lyra? Nathan's voice cracked, a mix of fear and confusion lacing his words. I thought I could control it. I thought we could use it. But now, I can feel it changing me. It's not just knowledge, it's more. Lyra's expression softened, but her eyes were steady. It was never meant to be controlled, Nathan. That's why my people fell. They try to harness it, to use it as a weapon. But it's not something you can bend to your will. You can't fight it. Nathan took a deep, shuddering breath, but his body still felt like it was trembling with the weight of what he knew and what he didn't want to know. The orb had opened a door, but it was a door that led to destruction. A door that humanity was not prepared for. I can't just let it go, Nathan said, his voice breaking. I can't let it destroy everything. You don't have to, Lyra said gently. But you have to make a choice. The power is here. It's always been here, buried beneath Kharra. But you must decide if humanity is ready for it. If you believe they are ready. Nathan looked up, his eyes scanning the chamber around them. The energy was still rippling through the ruins, the ground beneath them threatening to collapse. Solis and the military were coming. He could hear the engines of their vehicles now, their voices reaching his ears on the wind. They had found them, and the only thing standing between humanity and the raw power beneath the earth was him. If I let it go, what happens to us? Nathan whispered. What happens to you? Lyra hesitated, her gaze turning to the pedestal that had once held the orb. The energy that had surged from it was still alive in the room, thrumming like a heartbeat. You'll have to let the power return to the earth, to the planet. It has to be buried again, or it will consume everything. The realization hit him like a ton of bricks. He had thought that unlocking the power meant salvation, that humanity could rise above the limitations of the present and control the future. But in that moment, standing at the heart of Kharra's ruins, Nathan understood. The power wasn't meant for domination. It was meant for destruction or preservation. And it was his choice to make. The sound of military vehicles grew louder. He had no more time to think. His decision had to be now. I can't let it fall into their hands, Nathan said, his voice firm with a sudden clarity. If Solis get their hands on this, there's no telling what she'll do. Humanity will never be ready to control it. Lyra nodded, her expression solemn. then you must act. Now, Nathan turned to face the center of the chamber. He felt the power coursing through him, and for a moment, he hesitated. It was so easy to want to harness it, to believe that it could make them stronger, that it could give humanity the edge it needed to thrive. But as Lyra's warning echoed in his mind, he knew she was right. It was not something they could control, and if they tried, it would consume them, just as it had consumed her people. With a final, stealing breath, Nathan stepped toward the pedestal. The energy around him pulsed once more, as if the planet itself was trying to keep him from undoing what had been done. His fingers hovered over the surface of the pedestal, and he closed his eyes, letting the power flood through him one last time. This wasn't about strength. This wasn't about knowledge. This was about survival. He pressed his palm to the stone, and in that instant, the energy surged with a blinding light, threatening to rip the very fabric of the room apart. But Nathan didn't flinch. He let the power go, feeling it pulse away from him, back into the planet where it belonged. The vibrations grew stronger, the light more intense, and then, just as suddenly as it had started, it stopped. The room fell silent. Nathan opened his eyes, his body trembling, but the energy was gone. The weight inside him had lifted, and with it, a sense of calm washed over him. The ruins around them, though cracked and scarred, stood resilient. And for the first time, he felt as though the planet itself had accepted his decision. "We did it," Nathan breathed, his voice low with a mixture of exhaustion and relief. Lyra stepped beside him, her gaze soft. "You did it. Now, humanity can begin again, without repeating our mistakes." But even as they stood there, catching their breath, the sound of Solis's vehicles echoed from the distance. They had to move. The choice had been made, but the consequences were only beginning. "We need to go," Nathan said, turning to face Lyra. "The military's here. We need to disappear before they arrive." Lyra gave him one last look, sad but resolute. "Then let's make sure that the past is buried where it belongs." And together, they turned toward the jungle, leaving the ruins of Kharra behind them. The future was uncertain, but for the first time, Nathan believed that humanity had a chance to shape it. Without the weight of power, without the mistakes of the past,